All right.
All right. All right, what up, y'all? Welcome to episode 92 of 15 with the Buns. I am Yubi, joined by...
Hello, I am the Buns. How is the World of Warcraft community today?
I'm sure they're doing fantastic. And Buns, do you have a shout out for this week?
No.
Honestly, I don't really have one either. I haven't... So if you want, we can just skip shout outs this week. We can go mutually. We don't know.
How about
we don't have
my
shout-outs.
shout out will go to the 19 Twink community for having 6 different guilds pre-mating this weekend in preparation for the Twink Cup. That's my shout out.
And that's actually a fantastic lead-in to today's topic, which will be, we're what, 3 months away from the Cup itself, Buns?
Yeah, we're just a little shy of 3 months right now. A little under, I should say. Which is pretty exciting. You know, we keep talking about it like it's some pretty distant thing, but sooner or later, you know, July's going to roll around. August is going to be here.
Time keeps on slipping, and you're right. It seems like, a couple weeks ago, we did the first one when Merm put out the Indiegogo. And since Merm came out with the Indiegogo, for you guys who haven't been listening or aren't fully aware, over $7,000 have been raised for the Twink Cup, all of which is going to the winners. There's going to be, what are the exact amounts? Do you remember?
Pretty sure it's 6,900, 100.
Okay, so the 6,000 goes to...
Something like that. That's
Legit, yeah, we'll use that as rough. I think that sounds about right. The 6,000 will go to the winning squad for the Warsong Gulch tourney. The 900 will go to the squad that wins the 3v3 tournament, and the 100 will go to the possibly not actually going to happen, and I'm a little disappointed about that because I would really like to hear some twinks kick off some freestyles. But the freestyle rap battle may or may not happen, so stay tuned for updates on that.
Oh, it's not going to happen.
All right, well then that
No,
100...
actually it may. It honestly might. It might.
God, I hope it does. I think that would be so funny. And especially if people are good, like how cool would that be? Because you know they'd be kicking some like, yo, I was a Warsaw Gulch type rap.
No, I'll tell you what. If that actually happens, I think you're gonna see some out of bracket material. How about that?
Oh, you think they're gonna come in spitting like from the streets?
I think we're gonna see some other like WoW Twitch streamers maybe making guest appearances for their rap debut on the Twink Cup. Shout out Barry.
All right, well, I'm hopeful that happens. Whether it does or not, we'll see. Let's move right on ahead to actually doing our sort of 3-month preview, I guess, current state of affairs sort of thing. So where would you like to start with that, Buns?
Well, I'm going to start it off where you left it off. And one thing, you know, I was telling Yubi right before this cast, you know, we had talked about the Twink Cup probably 2 to 3 months ago. I mean, that was a long ways away. But this is a good checkup point for us in the community and everyone that's looking to get involved in the Twink Cup, just to get a better understanding of where we're at about the 3-month mark. Yubi had mentioned we've already raised $7,000 for the Indiegogo. One of my concerns as of recently is that Indiegogo's timer has ran out. Probably somewhere between 20 and 30 days ago, and it has closed. And as of now, it would be great if we could get Merm to open up another one. And that's one of my biggest concerns right now, because when you have so many people promoting the Twink Cup and telling people, oh, donate it to the Indiegogo, well, currently you physically cannot donate anymore because the window closed. And on one side, if there's not going to be any more, that's understandable, but it needs to be announced. Because at this point, people are under the impression that you can continue donating when in actuality the timer on the Indiegogo had ran out and you cannot donate. The donating window is closed at this point. So for me, that is a concern. I brought it up. I private messaged Merm today. I had said something in a thread 2 weeks ago with an @ tag but didn't receive a response. So hopefully we can get some clearance or a better understanding on what's going on there, so that people can continue contributing and looking to find ways to help promote the Twink Cup. Going off of that, though, I want to look at some of the things that are a little more media and a little more behind the scenes stuff before we actually go into talking about what's going on in the Twin Cup. So, another standpoint is, yeah, there's been a lot of pre-mades going on recently, and that has been a really good thing for reasons that you wouldn't think of. Now,
Such as?
well, Yubi, I was going to get there. but, all right, Dick. Anyways, no, you're not Dick. You're just trying to speed the pace along, but here we are. Now I'm talking about it. Anyways, so, for those of you that play in the 19 community, as of now, there's been some behind-the-scenes stuff that's been going on. One of the biggest concerns, I think, with the entire Twin Cup, from an inner community perspective, is that Merm is not active in the bracket.
Okay.
And that's been kind of a large concern that has shown in different colors, whether it be necessary rules that are going on in the comp, making sure that information's updated at appropriate times, getting to understand like team leaders and how the tournament physically needs to be run, etc. One thing that is good that has gone on behind the scenes that Merm has done so far is, for those of you that play in the bracket, is Nudge, who is a member of the 19 community, and Merm have been talking on and off for the past 2 or 3 months, and it looks like Nudge is going to be running the spectator point of view for the Twitch streaming.
Nice.
For the actual channel.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you guys kind of a bit of pre-made from
Perspective?
Oh my gosh. We're so caught up on the whole Twin Cup. I just said pre-made. I'm going to give you a preview into what the pre-mades may look like.
Okay.
From a viewer experience and some of the things that you can understand and should be excited for going into the tournament. So, Merm and Nudge have been talking. First off, let's start at the very basics. For those of you that have been watching the RBG tournaments or anything like that, you've kind of seen the outline for the Spectator Battleground add-on, and it is awesome.
Yes, I've seen some screenshots and a little bit of footage that's been compiled, and that is going to make things so much different and accessible for the viewer as far as what's going on. So it's not just limited to that individual perspective.
Yeah, the coolest thing about the add-on, and it's like, basically it's, I'm going to explain this to everyone so they get an understanding. So previous to Warlords of Draenor, you would queue pre-mades by going into war games, and you would have the other leader on a real ID, or you'd be next to the other leader on the same server, and you would challenge them via the war games. Blizzard has taken this whole process a few steps farther, and they've given commands to do the war games. They've made it more accessible cross-server to do war games, and they've also added in the spectator challenge mode. So basically, how spectator challenge mode works is that there is a third party, and they are a spectator party. And for the Twin Cup purposes, you as a viewer will be watching from the spectator point of view. With the you'll be watching from the spectator point of view with the Arena Live Spectator add-on and the BG Live Spectator add-on. It's all part of one thing. Really cool add-on that's going on there. So basically,
from what I saw, just to try and give it almost seems like there's a drone and they can kind of take it around the field. Is that kind of an accurate way to describe it?
That's a part of the whole.
Okay.
The cool thing about the add-on is it gives you many options on what you can do. You basically have a drone. You are an invisible ghost, and you can fly around the field. That kind of comes standard with just being a spectator, though. That's not really anything outside of the box. As a spectator, you can do that. But the Arena Live add-on, what it basically does for you, in the Battleground add-on, is it gives you all 10 players on each side, gives you their health bar, their class, their name. You can see if they have trinkets up, etc. The weird thing at 19 that's a little weird is it expects the tunes to be 100, so sometimes like on certain classes you'll see like abilities like deterrence or things that are there.
Yeah.
That obviously are not there.
Like, why haven't they used deterrence? They could have lived if they would have used deterrence. Like, bro, listen, we ain't got deterrence yet.
Yeah. No, right. So, but for the purpose of overall, the add-on is just awesome. So it gives you both teams. They have the team names up top. It lets you do the scores, etc. Shows you how many caps each team has. But let's go into the really cool part of the function. So,
Let's hear it.
yes, the normal Battleground spectator point of view, just the raw UI of the spectator, allows you to be a ghost. So does the add-on. It allows you. It incorporates that idea, and it still allows you to be a ghost. What the add-on does for you that Blizzard does not is it gives you the whole UI of everyone's health, and it also allows the player that is using the add-on to click on the people on either team. They can click on anyone from either team, and it'll give them that person's point of view.
Oh, so they're like body hopping throughout the field. Like, oh, looks like say the Fs. They can just look at the FC's health. It looks like they're dropping, so they can quickly drop to the F or switch perspective to the FC and see what's going on there. Or they can see like who's on attack, so they can switch to one of the players on offense, like leading that charge. That is badass.
It is so cool, and it's going to be awesome for the 19 Cup, the Twin Cup for sure, because there are people all over the place at 19 for field control. So you're going to have all these different perspectives. At one point, you might be looking at an FC, and then it could swap over to the opposing FC. It could go to a team's hunter. It could go to the opposing team's hunter, or a rogue point of view. There's just going to be a lot going on, and the reason that I bring this up is the great thing with so many of the premates recently, and the flexibility of leaders being acceptable. That's not the right word. I'm struggling to find the right word. But they are being
having difficulty with vocabulary
they're being
today.
accepting of queuing via spectator. So basically, the majority of the premates that have been played this weekend have been spectated by Nudge, which is really good because it's giving him the opportunity to figure out how the add-on works.
Yeah, because he's going to need to be familiar with it. You don't want his like crash test run to be, all right, we have the first game of the Cup. There will be some minor bumps in this road here because this is their first time using it. No, he's going to have all that straightened out, or at least as much as can be realistically expected to give the people watching the best experience possible from a viewer standpoint. That's badass.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's very... it's awesome that all the guilds and leaders are cool with that. The cool thing about the add-on, too, is I'll tell you what, if you queue it via spectator, it actually sometimes negates some of the problems that you would queue otherwise. Like, sometimes you run into issues when you're queuing cross-server where you can't get the leader. How can I explain it? So, when you queue cross-server, regardless of faction or realm, if you physically can't run up to the person and challenge them to the specific war games, you're forced into queuing random battlegrounds. What the add-on allows you to do is skip that whole process, drag the two people's real IDs in the leaders of both groups into a queue system, and you can click the specific battleground you want to play. So you can completely avoid having to leave Eye of the Storms in Arathi Basin when that comes up. Queue specific war song and get right to the point.
Oh, well, that expedites everything, too. You don't have to BS around with all that. So that just as far as, like, tournament flow, that will be helpful.
Oh, exactly. And it's just awesome that we're getting this repetition and practice in now as opposed to later. So going off of that, I feel that it's really beneficial for that there are some people right now that are doing some of the behind the scenes work to make sure that this tournament is going to be ready to go preparation-wise. I just feel that at one side, while we have some people that are making these kind of efforts, I also am concerned on another side because I'm not sure that both parties are completely in unison. Like, I'm concerned with, there's going to be a ton of people watching this. This is going to be hyped up to be a really big event.
Well, just think about how many people watched last year where it was the first time that it happened, and you still had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people watching. Actually, yeah, I guess. Why am I saying hundreds? I forgot about if you add up all the different streams. I'm just thinking of, like, yours and, say, Moran's. But, yeah, all of those different streams added in, we had no idea what was going to happen with the tournament. It didn't have nearly the hype going into it. It had less than half the prize pool. From what I'm sounding, it probably less teams. I mean, we've actually have Holinka and Lore and like Blizzard confirmation and helping spread the word of the tournament through Twitter and acknowledging it with a blue post on the forums. So I mean, it's God, I don't even know what factor you want to multiply the hype going into this, the amount of people that are just aware of it, that are going to be coming like, oh shit, let's see what this 19 thing's all about.
Yeah, it's awesome the kind of recognition we're getting for sure, from anywhere from Blizzard to just people whispering about it on Realms, etc.
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned. I think that with what we just talked about, with the hype that's going into this tournament, I'm a little concerned with what I said earlier, where I know Merm is a very dedicated individual, and it shows by the effort he's put in so far.
Mm-hmm.
But as we're getting closer to the Twin Cup, I think that the standards for this, we've built the standards up for this cup, for the whole entire experience to be pretty high quality and pretty well
Yes.
run. From one point of view, I'm excited that people like Nudge are getting out there and are making the efforts to get in these pre-mades 3 months before and figuring out how the add-on works, figuring out how to get the best point of view. But that's just a piece of the puzzle. There's going to be a lot going on, like out of games. Is there going to be a background screen? Is there going to be camera point of views that we're going to have people talking through? Is there going to be what other extras are there going to be, and is it going to run smoothly, etc.? I think that there's a lot of details that end up going into these kind of tournaments.
Have you thought about? There's one guy who I see posting on TI, and I think he's made several posts saying he can do this. I believe his name is Muskie, and saying how he has prior experience shoutcasting. I think it was League of Legends. I could be mistaken on that, but like he has legitimate experience with it. So have you and like the other people in our working behind the scenes considered or given thought to the fact of having people practice shoutcasting these games and going through, because that's another thing. It's like, it's great if Nudge knows how to work the different camera angles and like pick on this person like when that push is coming in. But it's also another thing to be able to properly relay that information audibly.
If you ask I'm going to answer your question first, and definitely the shoutcasting part of that has been addressed. Some of the things that they're talking about doing, idea-wise and theory-wise, they have a lot brewing. They're talking about having multiple shoutcasters that will be in the games. They're also talking about having the ability for certain team captains to come and shoutcast and do commentary on the games that are not for their teams, and giving, more personal, more insight onto the bracket, specific details, etc. They're also talking about having post and pre-game interviews, having interviews with the captains, having interviews with players. And all this idea-wise sounds awesome. This is a ton of content, but, this goes back to what I'm saying. It's like, that is a lot. That's a lot to handle. And I just think that it needs to be addressed to get it all fluent, congruent, and running in the same line is going to be a challenge. And I just think it's silly that. Let me take it back. Nothing wrong has been done at this point. I'm just saying that.
Well, no, it's good to put out the concerns now.
I'm preemptively. I want people to be aware that this is a huge project. It's going to be taking a lot of effort. Are there steps being made in the right direction? Yes. But I think it's time that we start going from the brainstorming process to how are we legitimately going to line this up for the tournament Twink viewer stream.
And that's also, you could have the best laid plans, but what happens if, say, team leader who's scheduled to go on, say, their post-game, let's talk with Chris Mortensen interview, but they lost. And I'm like, fuck this. I'm not talking to anybody. And, it's like that angry throw the headset down because they lost in like the past 30 seconds. Like, how do you account for that?
Oh, you gotta go TNT style. You just pick the winning team, best player. Don't even fuck with that.
It's like, we're here standing in Ogrimmar. We're with Team MVP HB. HB, how do you feel about that game there? How do you think your team did? It's like, well, Chris.
Yeah. No, I think the whole concept is really cool. But even like going off of like just what you said right there, you didn't know it, but you said it, and I'm going to go off of it. It's like we're standing in Orgrimmar here. It's like, look, what the fuck's going to be happening in between the games on the stream? Like, is there going to be a backdrop? Is there going to be like a screen? Are we going to have cameras up? Is it going to be we're going to be sitting there watching someone's character? Because I'd rather not sit there and watch someone's character. in between the games. It would be a lot cooler if we had a second scene of images and maybe score updates, kind of like the 20 free-to-play tournament had. I thought the 20 free-to-play tournament backdrop was excellent and really well set up for those games where they had the team names, the scores, they had some music going on in the background. I thought that was an excellent setup, and anyone that's taking part in the planning to putting into actuality of this tournament needs to take a look at how the free-to-play tournament handled their in-between queue times, because not only were they efficient on getting the time done, it looked legitimate, the backgrounds looked awesome.
What did they have up? Did they just have like different like screenshots in the background?
No,
did they have like videos or commentary going?
They had an art, like they basically had a backdrop. They had a backdrop that was moving, kind of. It had like a Horde flag and Alliance flag, some fire in the background. It had the scores up that were updated between the teams with the team names, etc. I want to see some of these measures being taken into for the cup. And yeah, is it asking a high order? Yeah, like from me sitting here, and here's the other thing. From a community standpoint and from like me standpoint, we can sit here and nitpick all we want on saying what we think the tournament should have, what we want the tournament to have, what we expect the tournament to have. But in actuality, people actually have to put in the work. There has to be enough people willing to put in the work to make these things happen. And I just want to make sure with the comments that we're saying here that all of these ideas have the actual represented amount of people to help execute and make sure, this is going to be legitimate for the Twin Cup stream, because people want to see a clean and professional stream.
And it is such a huge undertaking. And I feel like when a lot of people just watch something like this, everyone's so quick to judge and point out, well, I don't like the way this happened. And, dude, this was terrible. Why didn't you do that? No one really considers how much work goes into it. I mean, it's not like everything that you've been saying. It's like, well, we have those pre-post game things. We have those backdrops and stuff. There needs to be someone willing to make those backdrops. There needs to be someone willing to conduct those pre and post game things. And it's not like, hey, that'll just happen. No, you have to have people not only willing to, but that are able to perform said task or create said image. And it's not always that easy to find someone that is willing to, able to, but has the time to do it as well. Because it's not like you're just asking someone to say, all right, listen, you have an hour on Saturday, right? No. You need to be able to devote your whole Saturday or like a Sunday, probably a weekend, I mean, it's not like you're just asking for a little bit. So there's a lot that's going to be going into this, and I think it's good that we're having this discussion 3 months out, and I think it's also good that you're kind of bringing up some of your concerns, because they are things that need to be addressed. You needed to figure out what is realistic. I know we want this, but are we able to pull this off in a way that is going to be a proper representation of the bracket? It's not going to be half-assed. People aren't going to be like, dude, I wish they just wouldn't have done that. I understand what they were going for, but just couldn't pull it off.
No, I mean, yeah. It's just things that need to be taken into account for what are we going to be accounted for? Like, are all these things going to be lined up for when the tournament goes? Or are we going to be sitting here a week before the tournament and be like, wow, we need to get our shit together?
Yeah, just running around like a crazy person. Oh, shit, oh, God, we need to get this, we need to get that. And I don't think that's going to happen.
No, here's my biggest concern with the entire thing is that Merm is semi-active via Twink Info forums. Mm-hmm. I think to some of the people that he's already come in contact with, like Nudge, and there's probably a few other people out there where they're already talking personally, they keep in track with. But from a public point of view, you would say that Merm is pretty a non-factor in the bracket, like activity-wise. So I just want to make sure that going into this, we, as a bracket, we just need to understand and really get a picture that we have, we have the shit together for the stream when it comes time. But also,
I'm not sure that...
I'm not, questioning, dedication or effort being put in. I'm questioning the legitimacy of executing the twink stream.
Real quick, Buns, if you have a way, turn your mic up a little bit. And also, I was going to say is I'm not necessarily sure that Merm needs to be an everyday player. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, what the fuck do you mean he doesn't need to be an everyday player to know what's going on? He just needs to be able to have people around him that are trustworthy, responsible, and have the best intentions of the bracket at heart to relay the information properly to him. And be like, listen, ferals are obscene. You put those in the tourney, it dramatically shifts the way games are going to unfold and not for the better. And that's kind of the most obvious example, but just kind of one to give you an idea. It's like, you don't have to play in the bracket every day. That's something that can be relayed to you by other people.
No, I agree. It's just that, there's not a whole lot being said on the forums by Merm all the time, so we just need to start getting our apples in a line. I think that's where we're at right now.
Make sure an apple doesn't fall off the apple cart.
An apple a day keeps the twink man away. I don't know where I was going with that, but...
Yeah, neither do I. I was thinking you're going to have something come after that, but I'm pretty sure you want the twink man coming since the twink cup is coming.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I meant. Just got.
All right, well, Buns, I would like to shift this from sort of the behind the things, which I think we went quite in depth with, to what you've kind of seen take place with the pre-mades. Any sort of changes you've seen since the last time we had a Twink Cup discussion, which, was several months ago.
Well, why don't we start here? I think that come tournament time, we'll have anywhere between 6 and 10 teams.
And how many were in last year's?
5. 6 would be like... 6 would be saying that we had some last-minute backouts.
Okay. Because
it looks like pretty much guaranteed we're going to have 6.
I would say just looking at all of the people that are just saying in threads like, I'd love to have a team, I'm looking for a team, I would be shocked if there was less than 8.
But I wouldn't. One part of me understands where you're coming from, but the other part of me doesn't, for another reason that we talked about on another cast, and there's a lack of leaders. And I think that there's a lot of people right now that are interested in being part of the Twink Cup and being on a team, but there's not enough people
willing to step up
masses to say, I want to lead a team. So I don't know how I feel there. I think that the teams that have already come and made a foundation for themselves in the bracket, I look at those teams and be like, okay, well, at this point, it looks like we have anywhere between 8 and 10 teams. Mm-hmm. And assuming that all goes well, we'll probably have 8 and 10 teams. But it's life, and 1 to 2 may drop out. There's team can jump in, so you never know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of... Yeah, I think 6 to 10 is a safe number. Personally, I think it's going to be on the higher end of that, but 6 is probably the lowest number that you'll see.
So, I mean, if you said 6 teams doing war games, was that correct? Or
yeah, there were 6 guilds this past weekend that were playing in war games. The games were... Well, okay. Where should I start here? I don't want to go off and just start naming the teams I think are going to play or not, because I don't think that's my place to do that.
I don't even know if that's necessarily what needs to be said either. I'm kind of more looking for what you've learned from them and how it may play into the Twink Cup, like whether it's comp, strategies, like something so the people listening to this that are either interested in forming a team or have a team and are looking for some insight to assist them, like what can benefit those players? What have you learned? Okay,
the first thing that I've learned... Let's say a few things here. Let's back it up a little bit. I'm going to say that I'm really impressed. We're sitting here 3 months before the tournament, and there's 6 teams on a weekend that are getting out there trying to get active, getting their warm-ups going. They're starting to get games in. They're starting to get reps in. Excuse me. That was bothering me a lot. Sounded like a frog for a second. But a lot of teams out there right now that are getting their reps up, trying to get a feel for the bracket. So first off, I think that's great signs 3 months before the tournament that you have that kind of activity.
Yes.
And have that kind of commitment from guilds. Going off of that, my current viewpoint is that at this exact moment, you have 3 tiers. You have the lower tier of guilds, you have a middle tier, and you have a higher guild.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go and name guilds, but you pretty much have your low tier guilds, and then you have your few high tier guilds, and there's probably one guild that I would consider middle tier. And considering that we're 3 months out, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
But also, is that... I mean, I don't understand how you avoid that. There's always going to be favorites. You're always going to have your Warriors.
Sure. I agree.
You're going to have, your Bucks, Rockets, whatever it is. I mean, there's no way around something like that.
I agree, but I think it's... and on one side of me, it's like, it's hard to make comparisons to the NBA because you have, like, in this standpoint, because you're talking about, like, professional athletes that spend inordinate amount of time as their job training for their competitions and being active. Mm-hmm. Obviously, talent plays into that, etc., and there's just so far limits of things that teams can do, and synergy obviously plays into that. From, like, a World of Warcraft Twink Cup standpoint, I think that those factors, WoW is not a job for most people that play 19 Twinks.
I'm pretty sure it's not a job for anyone who plays 19 Twinks.
So, I guess what I'm saying is that I think that the teams that have already set themselves in stone to be at top level tier and a low level tier, you're talking about, I guess you're talking basketball, like 4-0 sweep, 30-point games right now.
See, I get where you're coming from, but I feel like that's an unfortunate way to kind of state it, especially since we're 3 months out. Whereas
I'm not trying to be negative. I mean, I'm saying that there is 3 months, and I think it's proactive that we have people that are out there trying to. They're testing the waters right now, and they're figuring out what they want to do comp-wise.
Okay, so
okay, sorry.
Well, I was gonna say is I think we use this phrase again. Think of it as a call to arms, like. Recognize the areas that you have to improve. Know that you have this time to do so. And the fact that you've had, 6 teams, you said they're broken down into 3 tiers. And I would kind of assume teams have a general understanding of, say, where they fall in those tiers. But I think it's also important to understand that just say because you're in, say, tier 3, doesn't mean you can't move up into tier 2, and it also doesn't mean that you can't get a break. Someone makes a great play that allows you to beat tier 1. The Nuggets beat the Mavs way back when in a best of 5 as a 1 seed versus I forget how many teams were in the league at that point. But Nuggets beat the Sonics. I'm sorry, not the Mavs. It did something no one's ever done, which I think would be awesome in the Twink Cup if you saw this squad that no one really thought much was going to go far and just blew the doors off of the 1 seed, or just ended up winning that 1 seed, and everyone's like just standing like, huh? What just happened? It's like, hey man, anything can happen when you're playing a game.
I guess going off of that, I just don't feel like you'll see those upsets that you're talking about. I think that you could see a middle tier team beat I think that you could see a 1 tier team upset, if that makes sense. Like I don't think you'll see a tier 3 beat a tier 1. I think you could see a tier 3 beat a tier 2 or a tier 2 beat a tier 1, depending how the game goes, and it depends how the game goes. Mm-hmm. People look at I think people need to, coming into this tournament, think about Warsong way differently than most people think about it.
And what do you mean by that?
And I was having a talk the other day. I was just hanging around on stream after these. Not on my stream. I was watching someone else's stream after some of the games that were played this weekend. And I was just watching them, and they just coincidentally were testing something for pre-made. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to go into specifics, but as me looking out for someone else, I just really felt strongly that what they were doing was a mistake. And as me being I just wanted to be vocal and give them my like blunt, honest opinion. I wasn't being rude about it whatsoever, but I just told them like straight up. I wrote them about 4 to 5 paragraphs on why specifically I didn't think what they were doing would work and they should focus on something else. But I almost want to give constructive criticism on what I think generally teams could maybe change their game plan and view Warsong Gulch from another perspective. Because I think where you see a lot of teams struggle with, what comp are we going to run? Are our players individually as skilled? Like, do you think individually we're better players than all other players, etc.? What can we do to get better? I think that those are some questions that some teams may find asking themselves when in reality, 19s is really simple when you think about it. If you put yourself in a position with a reliable comp, I think some people... I even fall into this sometimes, to be completely honest. I'll sit there and be like, maybe I can come up with a comp that's going to give me some sort of magical advantage against another team. And I think some people at some point have always sat down and thought about that. Like, can we get a comp advantage over this team? But in reality, if you set yourself up with a strong comp and you think through rationally, like, yeah, we need a Resto Druid FC right now. Like, you have to have one. You need a Rogue. You have to have one. You have to have 1 to 2 hunters for sure for tracking FCs, a warrior, a brewmaster monk. You fit in some of the pieces. Maybe there's a little fluctuation with your third healer, your 5th or 6th DPS, etc.
Yeah.
But you set yourself up for a strong comp, a reliable comp. It becomes more of a team synergy and a positioning thing. And most people don't think about that, but this is my advice that I give to people going into the cups. Look at 19s as not so much of an individual standpoint game and how an individual can make a difference. Look at 19s as where you have more numbers on the map, you have an advantage on that area in the map. Let me break that down a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, because, that sounds kind of like, well, duh, but I know you don't mean it in sort of that duh way.
So, let's break it down a little bit here. So this is a conversation that I had with someone the other day, and I was trying to explain to them, they were talking about, they're telling me that they were considering rolling a team with 10 not 10 DPS, Jesus, but they're considering...
I would like to see that.
They were considering running a team with 10 in mid. And I said... Okay, that's fair enough. I think that at this point, you could make an argument for that, but I'm going to explain to you why I wouldn't run that. So, let's break it down. If they're running 10 in mid, this team was talking about running 2 boomkins. Other people will run 10 in mid and not run a second boomkin. The point for running a second boomkin is so you have extra damage in mid, etc., but you would lose your rogue because of that, because you have a limit of 2 stealthies. And that also would force you to run something else besides a Resto Druid FC. So most people that are running 10 in mid are not running Resto Druid FC, if that makes sense.
I think that actually makes pretty good sense, yeah.
Because there's really no reason for you to run 10 in mid unless you, you pretty much need to not be running a Resto Druid to run 10 in mid.
God, this seems like a throwback to last expansion with the whole just mid-struggle thing.
So, let's break it down here. Said team runs 10 people in mid. I'm sitting here, and I'm running a Resto Druid FC. And I said, okay, as a player that I am and leader that I am, I'm going to go into a game. I'm going to look at the other team's comp, and I'm going to say, one of the first things I do as a leader is say, where does our comp have an advantage on them? Where can we hit some of their weak points, and how are we going to put ourselves in a position to hit those weak points? So I'm going to sit here, as a Resto Druid FC, I'm going to say, alright, I'm going to go stealth for the flag, and it's going to be 10 on 9 in mid. I know that I'm going to be... There's a few ways to think about this, and I'm going to say all of them. So, I could say, I'm going to go get the flag, and I'm going to play 9 on 10 in mid, and at that point, if I'm doing that, I'm taking the risk that I think that my midfield can hold on long enough that when I get the flag and come out of the base, that they'll be able to catch me when I jump into my team for support and be able to start positioning ourselves for a cap. I don't have to do that, but what I'm saying is that, so like let's say that does, they send 10 in mid, I have 9 in mid, I go get the flag as a Resto Druid, I pick up the flag. If they start, if what I said holds true and they hold mid, my team holds mid against their 10, even though it's a 9v10, position-wise, they're in deep shit because they sent no one to stop me to get the flag. They didn't save a rogue to sap control me and send another person over. They've committed fully to mid, and if they don't beat my team in mid, they don't have flag control, and we have flag 100%. So objective-wise... Hang on, no, hang on.
Okay.
I gotta go on a rant.
All right,
so objective-wise, I'm ahead of them because I have the flag, and position-wise at this point, if I've held out, I've held out. Now, how 19 Wargames work at the moment, and they probably will continue to work this way through the Cup, is that the biggest change as of recent is that there are no longer group reses in Wargames anymore. If you die in a Wargame, you're on an individual 25-second res timer for every single person.
That's changed. Yeah, I'm going to be honest, I didn't even know that happened. When did that happen?
That happened about a month ago.
Jeez.
And it is a big deal because it makes the argument for the mid-fight even stronger because it says, you know, if we can land 1 or 2 kills on you, we're going to snowball and there's nothing you can do after that.
Yeah, it's not like you can say, like, dude, I have 5 seconds on the res. You're about to die. Die now.
No,
sort of thing.
And so if you land 2 or more kills in mid, you've basically won mid and there's nothing the other team can do about it. That's kind of where it is right now. So here's kind of the risk you take. So, like, let's say I get the flag, right? And the other team's mid is doing what it's planned. Like, they are just doing work, and they kill 1 or 2 people. Here's what I'm going to do as a team leader at that point. I'm going to tell my players that can get away. Not everyone's going to be able to get away. Absolutely no way. You'll probably have 5 people that die, but maybe 3 get away. I think that's a fair number.
Okay.
So, you know, you have your 3 to 4 that live, your 5 that die, and then I have the flag. My 3 to 4 are going to go up tunnel into our base because they're going to go into our base, into our flag room, and I'm going to make you commit people into my base to pick the flag. If you don't send enough people up, they're going to kill you because you didn't send enough people up. If you overcommit people into the base and you send too many, that gives my reslers an opportunity to come up and I can get grouped with my team at the res. If you also overcommit too many, and I recognize that you overcommit too many, my players in the base that have been standing there to make you commit don't necessarily have to fight you, and they can go out GY and get grouped with the rest of the team. While now we have the flag in midfield, and we are grouped, and you are in our base with the flag, and now stacks are hitting. Now let's take another perspective. Let's say I decide, okay, they're going to play mid, that's fine. I'm going to go stealth and get the flag. And let's say that they're sitting there with double Boomkin Warrior, BM Monk, double Hunter, and a Mage, and I know that if we play mid, there's no way we're going to win. There's absolutely no way. What goes to say that I don't sit 9 on D? Because I'll tell you what, if I sit 9 on D, you're going to have a real hard time getting out without a Resto Druid FC.
That would be... Oh, that is a very interesting
And considering that you don't have a rogue, not much control on you. Not much control on me.
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, is that what's to say that if I think that you, during your... I know that most teams aren't going to think about that. And they may panic, and they may say, okay, well, we need to send a few people D. So what's to say that I don't bring my stealthies with me, and then based on how you move positional-wise, I tell them to stay with me or go on defense?
You know what I really, really enjoy about what you're saying right here? Is like right there, you've just given multiple strategies that I don't think even existed in the last Twink Cup, the way the meta was with just the range being so crazy. it seems like there's going to be. I'm hoping. I don't know if this is going to be the case, but a larger variety in class comps. There's going to be a lot more different strats, which comes from just a shift in meta, but also just people, learning from last cup to this cup and seeing, how the metas shift. And the fact that you even have a team now that says, like, I think we're just going to go bum rush mid, and you're like, you know what? I think I have a way to stop that. Whereas this time, let's say Twink Cup time last year, it was like, it's pretty important with mid, and it's also interesting to point out that prior to, I don't know, maybe a month or so to the Twink Cup, people weren't really using druids as FCs last year. So that was a shift that happened very close to Twink Cup, and I think
totally because of the RBG guild.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to make sure I was giving credit to the right place, but I did. That's Big Moran and his guild came in, gave that a shot, and tell me if I'm being too dramatic on this, but just kind of threw the old, you should probably have a prot warrior on his head. And I was like, nah, bro. Have you seen what Guardians can do?
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. A huge change in meta, and it's stayed, Resto Druid's like the best FC still. I wanted to get back on my situation here a little bit because I want to help paint the picture of how I look at Warsong now. And it's taken me a while and a lot of experience and a lot of other people's opinions to really formulate where I am now. So let's say that, well, I'm going to paint the picture again. I see you're playing 10. You don't have a rogue. You don't have a Resto Druid. Here I am on my Resto Druid. I'm going to go get the flag. Because I know that if I send my 9 people in mid, and by the way, I would send 9 people in mid. There's absolutely no reason for me to sit my rogue or my hunter on defense because you don't have anyone that's going to pick the flag. So I would send 9 on mid. What's to say why would I send my people in mid in the first place if I know that you guys have such a huge advantage DPS wise? Why would I play you in mid? What's to say I don't?
I've been listening to a whole lot of Dan Carlin over the past few weeks, and for those of you guys who aren't sure, he has this podcast, Hardcore History, and I've been listening to a lot of World War I, World War II type stuff, and the Germans did this thing where they would basically feign retreat, and they would bring opposing forces back in. Like, they'd have a group that runs up, they'd be like, oh shit, we're gonna die! So they'd run back and lead them right into their fortified defense. And that almost sounds like what you're doing. It's like, even though you're just staying there, but by not sending out, you're like, oh, dude, we can't handle this. Like, oh, dude, well, let's just run up there. Or like, say you send 2 people out, like, that's your attacking force. Like, all right, we wiped that, let's go in and get the flag. But in doing so, you're sucking everyone in to what he called the meat grinder. You're going to chop them up, you got the flag. At that point, you'll have those 2 out in the middle that died, ready to res, loop around, meet you, come back in, and it's like, well, that worked out pretty well.
No, yeah, exactly. But the only difference in what you said is I would not send anyone in mid. Because
I threw those 1 or 2 people out just to kind of fit into the analogy. But yes, I mean, even if you didn't throw them out, it's like, what are they going to do? Are they going to stand in mid and wait for you? You know what I mean? Like, they're going to move somewhere. No one's going to sit there and be like, let's throw our picnic tables out in the middle of this Twink Cup game. Like, there's a force that's going to move in one direction. And if one force isn't moving, the other is going to move to oppose them. And I'm not sure anyone's going to be disciplined enough or even have the foresight. Well, maybe you just gave them the foresight to be like, oh, maybe that's a real strategy. So let's play the... How crazy would that be if people actually started doing the waiting game? Like, well, we're just going to sit here.
No, exactly. And, I think that a lot of the top guilds right now are all feeling very similar, and they want people to be as competitive as possible and kind of look at things a different way. So, in my opinion, I just am going to give people my honest advice if they ask me for something. So for me, I had this conversation with someone else the other day. I told them, I'm like, what's to say that I don't sit 9 on D? Or what's to say that I don't have my rogue and druid come with me just in case you send people D? And if you don't send people D, I told them to go defense. Because there's no need for them to stay with me. And then that forces you to come into my base, get the flag while I have 9 on D, and get out with the flag.
And let's be
And
honest.
let's say if you start winning that, then I just tell my team, go out, GY, and get in front of our base and get with me.
But what's even more insane, it's like if you're not running, say, a druid, right? There are some very serious movement issues that your FC is going to face. And if you're coming into a fortified flag room with multiple levels of which your defense can be playing, like you can have people on the roof shooting down, you can have people on second floor shooting across, you can have people in the flag room just waiting, whether it be in that little cubby or whether it's coming out towards GY side. I mean, you can set up some crazy shite. Mm-hmm. And how the hell is a team, say running a prot, going to be expected to get out if you have 9 people on defense coordinated and set up?
Yeah, no. It's going to be really hard.
All right. Well, I think we did enough time on that specific example.
no, but you know what? It's really good to walk through this because, look, everything that we just talked about, if you have a decent comp, none of that relies on how individual players are doing. You're not using your specific team comp to get an advantage over another team necessarily. You're just running a basic comp. It's all about team positioning. And where do you have an advantage over another team?
Field awareness 101.
Field awareness 101. And I just want people to get a different mindset that they need to look at it as where do they have an advantage to play versus what can I do individually? And I mean, yeah, obviously there's always going to be little things you could do individually to meet the goal, everything more efficient. But at the end of the day, it's better that your group's in the right place at the right time than having the perfect mechanics down. Because you look at some of the guilds that are, even some of the top guilds that people would refer to, and it's not like every one of these players is sitting there on their 90 or 100 or whatever, sitting there like top player of World of Warcraft. No, we play 19 twinks. Like, yeah, are there a few exceptions to that? Of course, but it's more about how well do you synergize with your team, and are you really thinking through your decision process while you're in the heat of the moment.
Well, and also, if you're coming into a Warsong Gulch in the Twink Cup and looking at this as an individual activity, I feel like you've lost before you started. You're playing with 9 other people, and those 9 other people will determine whether you win or lose. 9.9 out of 10 times. Yes, there'll be one person that makes that insane play, but there's a good chance that insane play wouldn't even have the option to happen if the other people on your team didn't do something to set that up in one roundabout fucking crazy way.
Right.
All right, so you did the mid-comp. Is there anything else that you've seen people do that you have kind of strats for or against?
Okay, well, I just want people to look at it in a little different mindset here. So let's say you're running a team. Let's say you're running mirrors, honestly, with at least a Resto Druid, a Rogue, and a Hunter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some of the things that you got to account for when you have 2 Resto Druids is that competent teams are going to sit 2 on defense. At least as of now. That's what your most competent teams are doing as of now in the meta.
I'm never going to get used to teams running shit on D just because of how many years I was like, why would you play D?
It's weird. It's really weird, man. It's definitely it is a weird meta, but you know what? This is what's going to make it so much fun when you're talking about a viewer spectating point of view, because it's going to be jumping all over the fucking place.
Yeah.
You're going to have fights going on. You're going to have middle brawls going on.
Yeah.
You're going to have offense and defenses going on to get the flag. Games may end up even breaking into O&D as they progress. Like
O&D, at least from my perspective, it might be my old soccer dad years showing, but I find O&D way more fun to both watch and play.
I'll tell you what, if it actually goes into serious O&D where both teams have the flags in their base, that will not be fun to watch. I'm going to say that right
No, because then it's going to go turtle style, and that won't be all that fun, but there's just something I really enjoy about a well-coordinated offense and a defense that, or in like I say, the juxtaposition of that would be a well-played defense that either kites or wards off that offense. That I enjoy that so much more than the old 19 meta of mid. And I understand that's the best thing ever. I'm not trying to shit on it. It's just that's what I personally enjoy from a player and viewer perspective.
Oh, for sure. No, it's understandable. It's just we'll see how far that goes, I think, in this cup. I think we'll see. I think you'll see flashes of it. I don't think that you'll see it all the time. How about that? That's kind of where I'm thinking right now.
No, I'm sure we won't, but I will be on the lookout for it and be very excited when a proper non-turtle situation occurs.
Anyway, so let's assume that you have two teams, mirror comps, and assuming that they have... I'll just throw a comp out there. How about that? You have Resto Druid, 3 heals, 2 hunters, BM Monk, Arms Warrior, and Boomkin.
Okay.
Is that... Yeah, that's everything. Okay. So assuming that you have that, you're going to have both teams' Resto Druids are going to pick the flag. Now let's keep this in mind, right? I think to go along with what we're saying right now, in the adjustment and meta that you have individual 25-second reses are the two biggest things that teams need to be aware of right now going into the cup that are going to play major factors. You're going to have your Druid stealth to get the flag. By having... Now, there's two things that this does. Let's look at it from an offensive standpoint and a defensive standpoint.
Okay.
From an offensive standpoint, for the Resto Druid that's getting the flag, it's good because you're putting your team in a position where you're going to have the objective and you're putting yourself in, you're rolling a class that gives you an opportunity to get the objective faster for your team.
Mm-hmm.
And from an offensive and defensive standpoint, for a competent team that's defending a Resto Druid, you force them to commit at least 1 to 2 players on defense to block that Resto Druid from being able to pick solo and making it out of the base.
Okay.
Which, in most cases, is going to be a rogue and a hunter. So basically what has happened is competent teams at this point are basically mirroring that strategy. And they're going to send their Resto and their rogue D. Or their Resto and their hunter D. Now, it sounds a little robotic, where you have teams doing the exact same thing. But at the same time, that's where you can start to see players start shining and making plays. What if the rogue saps out a druid at ramp?
Mm-hmm.
And you have an early kill on an FC. And he's sitting at 25-second res. You are now 25 seconds ahead of the other team to getting the objective. Let's say vice versa. Let's say that the Resto Druid makes it into base. The hunter is still looking up ramp. And for some reason... Or let's say vice versa. Let's say that the rogue's going up ramp and the Resto Druid's alone going up tunnel. And let's say the Resto Druid nukes and kills the hunter in tunnel. Now, if he heals himself up, he's going to have a free pick, basically, because the rogue's not going to be able to kill him on his own. And the hunter's not going to be able to kill him on his own either.
That's actually a good thing to point out, is that the offensive capabilities of a Resto Druid should not be underestimated, given the way things currently are, where it's not like the old school thing where your FC has sacrificed everything to be an FC. It's like you have a character that can do legitimate work to someone if that character is played properly.
Right. So going off that, let's take it. Let's say that nothing special happens, right? Let's say there's no saps out, there's no one catches an FC out. The rogue and the hunter eventually go defense on flag room and are trying to prevent the FC from wherever he is to pick.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens on both sides. So, both teams right now, it's super weird to think about, but both teams are basically having a 7v7 in mid.
Okay.
And that now becomes important because both teams are in a position to get the flag, but until one team can gain momentum in midfield, they're not going to be able to send another person to go get the flag. know. I mean, it is kind of crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, no,
Because it almost forces one team to start, like, it forces, like, syncs. And it forces, like, how are you going to, like, land a kill in mid? And you may even see things where, like, you have your teams go and play at the start of the game, and while they're looking for the druids crossing the field, maybe they send a rogue in to try to sneak a kill before he breaks off on defense. Maybe they send the extra hunter in mid a little longer to try to help mid pressure to get a kill, and then break on defense, something like that. Or other strategies come out, like the argument for running 10 in mid. Maybe you decide, we really want to run 10 in mid to give ourselves that momentum early on, and you feel like you have a way to get, out of defense. It's not necessarily saying that there's a right or wrong strategy. We've just seen so far the strategies that have worked well and the strategies that have not worked well at this point.
But this also goes back to what we were saying with the introduction of the Druids by Big Moran and the RBG team. What was thought to be the best strategy leading up to the Cup did not turn out to be the best one.
Right.
So it's like, there's 3 months now, and I really, really hope, and I actually think it probably will, maybe not, 6 teams every weekend doing it, but I would assume there will be a fair amount of groups that are like, yes, we need to get some war games, we need to cycle in different players, we want to try different comps, and try different strategies, whether it's the 10 mid, the rest of Druid FC, like all the different things you can do, and things that you haven't even thought of yet, in order to working towards what is going to be like that, game-winning, cup-winning, $6,000 winning strategy.
And right, yeah, like, it's not... I just think that the biggest thing that teams need to think about is not necessarily what comp can win the game and give you an edge, but how are you going to use the comp that you're playing to give you an edge. And I think that there's a distinction in that, because you could mindlessly think that, like, oh, we're going to just run this comp and we're going to flavor beat them in midfield because we're going to have more damage. I think that that's a huge mistake, because if that's your mindset, the team's going to beat you because they're going to figure out a way, like...
We know what that mindset reminds me of? It's like the people that are like, oh, you're running comp XYZ in 3s. Of course you're a fucking gladiator. Well, why aren't you running comp XYZ? And why the hell aren't you gladiator? Right. There's ways. Yeah. There's ways to do things, and just because you are in that cookie cutter comp, it doesn't mean you're going to be able to execute better than the other team. And it really, like you've done a good job, I think, of pointing out, it comes down to execution. It comes down to synergy. It comes down to how you play as a damn team. It's not whether you have individual classes that shine on their own. It's can those classes come together and shine like a star.
Oh my god. But yeah, I mean, you kind of look at the meta right now, and I think that I'm trying to give the mindset that the top teams in the tournament are viewing it from where are we committing people to and why are we making those decisions.
And you know what? I
and
actually
you
want
need to start looking at that kind of perspective and mindset to get an edge.
I think Dids just brought a good thing up in chat, and it's something that I remember back in my, what was it from last cast? Proto-Twink days? From playing old school Nightfall. There was this one FC, was a warrior named Scary, who I think he, Sofa, Akuji Kuma, and like a couple other people, like just the bosses of Nightfall 19 FCs. But Scary would run a set pattern. So if you played enough games against Scary, like, okay, he ran up ramp, he's coming over here, I'm just going to wait here. And sure enough, Scary would be there. And Dids just brought up, I'm not going to say the name, but that someone just kind of has a set pattern. So that's another thing you can think about. It's kind
player
of
tendencies.
Yes, exactly. So it's like you're playing against this person. The same thing like with shears or jukes or something like that, or routes, or when they're normally going to do move X, Y, their field awareness and stuff like that. It's the more that people play in the bracket, and this is a good thing like with the pre-mades and such, you'll get those player tendencies. You'll start to see how they interact with teammates and such, and it's like, oh, well, okay, this happened, so there's a good chance Y is going to happen. And since Y happens, Z might happen. And that FC has a huge tendency to go ramp every time. Or maybe they always like to go down tunnel because that's where I expect their teammates to be. And you can use that to your advantage as kind of taking that prior to game starting, an edge you wouldn't normally have had. Maybe that team's technically better, but since you kind of had done some, let's bring it to some advanced scouting.
Advanced scouting.
Like, you're going to know and you'll be able to anticipate, and that'll make a huge difference. And that plays into the synergy and how you play as a team as well.
No, I think that these are all great points. And I just think that that's actually a really good point to bring up, too, because there's so many different things that you can look at when you're looking at player tendencies. It's like you can look at individual player tendencies. What do people tend to do on X class? You could look at team tendencies. You can look at, like, we think this team's going to run 10 in mid. Like, okay, we're going to make a plan to beat that. Or it's like, we know this team's going to be playing a Rest of Druid and get the pick. Like, how can we give ourselves an advantage against that, etc.? You just kind of...
God, you know what I want to see, Buns? I want to see some twinkcup scouts going and trying to get some tape. It's like, all right, I need you to check out the streams that Bun's been running.
The serious teams.
Some streams
I think
too.
Serious teams already do that, to be completely honest.
But I think that's awesome. I think that will bring. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. A whole new level to the actual cup. Like, just makes me more excited.
It's just that, with all this being said that we've kind of talked about here this past 30 minutes, you go back to the whole thing of what is this tournament actually doing for the bracket? Well, it's giving recognition to a bracket that has not received the credit and has been publicly viewed as a one-button bracket. And look at everything that we just talked about here in the past 30, 45 minutes. Tell me that's not the exact same thing you're talking about that your Gladiator endgame hero players are up there discussing, and with those kind of strategies. It's less about...
As we're discussing things.
But you're talking about this is going to be a really high-level tournament. I think the best teams in the tournament are going to make for great games to watch, be a part of, and commentate, etc.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about people and teams that are making decisions based off of not so much class comp. See, class comp is almost like... I think that there's like 6 or 7 classes that you have to have, and if you don't run them, you're really silly. And then the other 3, as long as you do something relatively reasonable, it becomes more about, are you actually outplaying the team? Are you moving better than the other team? Are you thinking outside what the other team has to offer? Are you exploiting their team's weaknesses? It becomes more about the mechanics, the team mechanics, I should say, of how you as a team are out-synergizing the other team rather than we have X comp and won because of X comp. And I think that that's what's going to make this tournament so much fun, where you look at games where it's like League of Legends. It's like, look at League of Legends. In a weird way, this is going to be very similar to League of Legends because you're talking about a game that literally has like 5 or 6 buttons on League of Legends. You don't have that many abilities on League of Legends.
I never even thought of it. That would be kind of funny. It's like, yes, the best... Well, I guess it's kind of relative as well. It's like top end, whatever. So I will stop that before I reach...
What I'm saying is that League of Legends is really based on like situational awareness, figuring out where people are, being able to execute under pressure in those tight situations, and giving yourselves positional and strategical advantages.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think this Twin Cup's going to have to offer. You're going to see some of the top teams making moves on the map and ways of exploiting teams' weaknesses comp-wise that is just going to make the tournament so interesting to watch from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And less about what individual players are doing with their abilities. Because let's face it, there's not that much cool shit that you can do ability-wise at 19. It's going to be more about how are teams executing as a unit. The cool thing about 19 is the entire time of pre-mades is that you have such little movement, you have such little cooldowns. Everything is so based on how well does your team move together, position, etc., because you don't have the cooldowns and you don't have the full skill set of abilities to back you up for mistakes.
And you know what? I think that's something that we've never actually brought up. But I think that's one of the best points that can be made about the bracket.
It pretty much makes you reliant on the people that you're playing with, and that's not
Yeah.
necessary for everything or every bracket.
I mean, it is to a certain extent, but the more buttons you have, the more abilities you have, the more outs you have to make up for your mistakes. The more outs you have for your teammates to make up for the mistakes. You take away, each level of that safety net, and you're stripped down to, basically like the core of whatever that class is. You got your word and your balls. You have your skill and your balls. Like, what are you going to do with it? And you can do so much, but you better hope that your teammates are there to back you up, because your class, you need other classes to complement what you can do, because your class doesn't have the full set of moves. And if your teammates aren't there to complement you, compliments to the chef, because you're going to be finishing that meal quick as fuck.
What have I
and the
been
next team going to get dessert?
Entire expansion. It's all about individual players filling their class role. That's what I've been preaching the entire expansion.
Yeah, and for the Twink Cup, it's how that individual role fits into
the whole.
Yes,
the role in the whole. But what
we need to get the role in the hole. You need to be the what's the Dunkin' Donuts, like the mini-me, where they just press out the middle of the donut and shut that out?
Oh, I love
That's what everyone needs to be.
No, but it's serious, man. Like, it really is a roll in a hole. You're talking about it's weird because you don't have, no, it actually is really simple. It's not weird at all. You don't have the abilities and mechanics ability-wise to show someone, hey, I just did this with my moves, and you didn't do this with your moves. I outplayed you move-wise. That's not... Can it happen in 19? Oh, of course it can happen. You can see things with that on priests, rogue saps, war stomps, racials, etc., clutch things like that. But at the end of the day, it becomes more about, am I in the right position at the right time? And as a whole, are we in the right position at the right time? Because it's more about, you'll see people that are the better players that are giving their team an advantage by filling their role more than you will see someone trying to make an outstanding play. Because, look, someone that's making an outstanding play is fucking retarded. Because you're sitting at 25-second res if you die based off that. So everything that you do to try to be your Twink Cup war hero and you fail is gonna hurt your team. Like,
if you're gonna take a gamble, you need to be aware of the risk versus reward and how that's gonna impact. So
I'm so happy that there's a 25-second res now, because it just, like, people don't realize how big of a deal that's going to be, and until /if the changes are made in 6.2 with the fences coming up on the GYs.
That's a whole. We're gonna have to do a whole new one.
Yeah.
Once that happens.
Until /if that happens, it's gonna be the wild, wild west if a team starts dying on individual res timers. I'm just saying that now.
I agree.
Is gonna be
I do want to say, before we go by that, I think that also has ended a few casts before. Let's bring this one home. Bow it up.
Roll in the hole, man.
I like that. That was really good.
Be
the donut mini, the AKA roll in the hole.
I'm excited for the Twink Cup, dude. It's gonna be awesome. I'm sitting here 3 months out, and I'm really excited.
I know. I'm excited too, Buns. Shit. All right. Find us bisnation.net, the BIS Nation on YouTube, BIS Nation on Twitter. Buns, throw your shite out.
At Fear the Buns on Twitter, twitch.tv/fearthebuns. Check into the Bis Nation forums, guys. They're looking quite savvy and up-to-date as of now. Quick loading screens. I made a post on the forums today, so go check it out under the TC thread.
All right. Well, thanks guys for listening. Thank you all for watching. Special shout out for Dids, and we'll catch y'all next week. I will be right back, Bunt.
Peace. Chain chopping will be great, Diddle. There's gonna be a lot going into this, man, and I think